Now, we are joined by the absolutely fabulous Dr. Kristin Austin. Now, she works for Rewriting the Code, or RTC, and there she serves as Vice President of IDEAS, which stands for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access. Now, while at Rewriting the Code, Kristin is committed to disrupting gender and racial inequity in tech by amplifying the strengths and experiences of college women in the technical space. Kristin or Dr. Austin, please, welcome to the stage. We're so happy to meet you today. If it were me and I was a doctor, I'd never shut up about it. So do you prefer Dr. Austin, Dr. Kristin? What do you prefer?
Kristin is more than fine. Thank you.
You are very welcome. All right. So as we go through these questions, and I know the audience is really eager to kind of dive in. Is there anything else you want our audience to know about you before we get started?
Other than the fact that I am getting over an asthma flare, so I have a cough, that's it. I'm sorry for the disruption of the cough.
No worries. I'm actually getting over like laryngitis among other things. So yeah, every so often my voice is just like frog in the throat. So
goes away. Yeah.
Gonna be fabulous here today. Okay, let's talk about leadership. What are some ways that leadership teams can become more inclusive and equitable? We are starting to see diversity, inch northward. But until we do, what are some ways to really see this in practice or to kind of help move that needle?
Absolutely. One of my favorite solutions to pushing inclusion and helping leaders to recognize their own areas of growth and need is to think about living in a fishbowl. So my favorite kind of example of that is Tom and Jerry are out for a swim in the ocean. They're just swimming along, enjoying themselves. And then Tom turns to Jerry and says, "Jerry, isn't the water great today?" And Tom says, "What? What is water?" And that is the piece that all of us live and exist within. We all have this fishbowl that is completely natural and normalized to us, but is completely unnatural and disnormalized to others. So, in order to push inclusion, in order to push more dynamic, diverse workplaces, it is so critical to understand that we all have our own fishbowl and we have to acknowledge that of others.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree. I think this is something we talked about a lot during the pandemic, right? Is that,
Yeah.
it's kind of like we're all in the same storm together, right? We're all
Yes.
we're all boats in the storm. And that's true, but not everybody's in the same kind of boat. Not everyone's in a
Exactly.
functioning boat. Not everyone is in their boat. Some of them are hanging on by their fingernails for dear
So
life.
a broken
Hi
oar.
to all of my people. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like so I think this is something we were able to talk about a lot more, especially intro into the pandemic, because we were seeing inside people's lives, right? It
Lives,
wasn't just the
literally.
person you saw in the next cubicle. It was, oh, this is what you have going on behind you. And not all of us are lucky or resourced enough to have dedicated office space. So we
Right.
got a front row seat to what other people's lives were like. And
Yeah.
there is nothing like seeing that. Like once you realize that your reality and your fishbowl is not
It's not
everyone's,
someone else's. Yep.
you can't unknow that. You know what I
You
mean? Like
can't.
once
Yeah.
once you know it, you can't unknow it. And you kind of think to yourself, like, how did I ever think that that's
Not.
how it was?
Yeah. Right.
You don't
Right.
know till you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, okay. So as we're going through, a lot of the conversations about DEI in the workplace talk about bringing your full self to work. Now, this can
Yes.
be like a term that doesn't resonate with a lot of people, especially if they have never felt like they couldn't talk about some facet of their lives or their personality at work. Now, I'm not saying like you should put everything on display when you're at work.
Right.
Bringing your
Right.
full self to work does not mean, you got to dump your purse out and let everybody, that's not what we're talking about. But if you've ever felt like you had to hold something back in the workplace so
Right.
as not to be undercut or risk
Right.
your safety or your position, this might
Yeah.
not make a ton of sense. But
Yeah.
what do we say at action? When people say bringing your full self to work, what are we talking about?
Absolutely. It's not even the onus is not even on bosses and organizations and businesses to say bring your full self to work because they don't own the outcomes of or because they own the outcomes of what happens when a person does. So really what it should be is bring your most comfortable self to work to the degree that you feel safe, right? Because an overly if I wanted to show up truly as my full self in my full non-medicated ADHD brain my frazzled mom of three morning, this, that. That's actually not what the workplace wants. That's actually not what the workplace wants. And the workplace would actually hold me accountable in negative ways if I really did bring my full self to work. And there's also a lot of double talk, right? So they'll say, bring your full self to work, meaning be talkative and outgoing. Oh, but don't talk about systemic racism. Oh, don't talk about that. So they may say, be open and honest. Oh, wait, but don't criticize XYZ. So it's be open, but only to the degree that I'm not uncomfortable. Or they may say, tell us what you need to be successful. Well, I need a hybrid work schedule. Well, I didn't mean that. That kind
No,
of
that wasn't on the table. That wasn't what we
that
meant.
wasn't an
Come on.
option. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for companies really are not the ones that should be telling people that to bring their whole selves. It should be an environment that is already cultivated such that I can show up bravely and boldly and without fear of some sort of retribution or lack of mobility. So the onus actually is on the culture of the organization, not a policy that says bring yourself. I often say to folks when places say kids are welcome, and then there are no coloring books or maybe no crayons, there are no little respite areas or a breastfeeding area for breastfeeding parents. Do you really want me to bring my kids, or does it look good for you to say kids are welcome? Or am I going to get a side eye when one of them starts getting a little busy or talkative? Right, being like a child. So that's where the difference is. It's not, you need to have a culture that already tells me that I can show up in the way that I want to, because maybe I don't want you to see my full self. Maybe I don't want you to. That's okay too.
Yeah, this is another aspect of that. Okay, so what if you don't want to bring your full self to the workplace? We started having conversations like this probably really soon after the murder of George Floyd, because there were a ton of people that wanted to support, but they also did not realize, and now they do, that in trying to support, you're probably asking people to talk about things they don't want to, or, stretch their comfort level in ways.
Right.
So let's talk about that. If people don't want to bring their full selves to work, how do you have that conversation?
One of my greatest recommendations is that all organizations allow their employees or their teams maybe to make, I like to call it a me manual. And it's basically a how to work with me. So it might be, I don't do small talk, or I prefer short to the point meetings, things like that, or I do not turn on
like, don't send me a task in email, send it to me in Slack so I can add it to my list. Like, yeah.
Exactly. Like it's a me manual. How can you get the most out of me, and how can I show up in the best way possible? So encouraging employees to actually have that me manual and use that amongst their teams is a way to actually allow people to show up as their full self without putting the expectations on them that they're going to engage in certain discussions or join certain committees or come to certain socials. None of those things are required at all. But I may have in my me manual, hey, I like signing up for things. So when there's another committee or a party planning committee, tap my shoulder. So just giving people the opportunity to say, this is how I want to show up in the workplace is so critical.
Yeah, I like this. And it kind of goes back to stuff we talk about all the time, like boundary setting. It's not, when you're setting these boundaries, it's not how you're not governing how other people act. You are saying, this is what I need. And granted, you might not get it 100% of the time, but you will not get it by never saying what you need. There are a lot of negatives in that sentence, but all right, we've got 20 minutes left in our session. I know that you had a presentation you wanted to get to. So do you want me to take a back seat and then we'll let you go? And if we've got time at the end, we'll go for more questions.
Yes. I just have a couple of things that I wanted to share. So I am going to literally share very briefly here. And then let me put it on presentation.
Slideshow.
There it is.
They changed it. And it fooled me too. So yeah, they changed it.
There you go. So yeah, just really wanted to double tap on some really major themes that relate to Black excellence in the workplace, especially as the expectations of professionalism have been held over the heads of Black and brown identities for sure. And of course, I just dropped my LinkedIn there because I would love to continue the conversation with other folks via LinkedIn. So one of my, excuse me, favorite things to interrogate is that industry claims to appreciate Black excellence while also trying to tame Black excellence. And so if there was no kind of greater example of this, even just as recently as last night. So obviously we had the Jay-Z Carter come to the defense and advocacy of his wife, who has more Grammys than everyone, yet has never won Album of the Year. And then you have Ava DuVernay, who has directed movies that have earned the top awards, Selma, you name it, but has never won Best Director. And in addition, there are no Black filmmakers who have won an Oscar for directing. So a lot of times what we see in industry and in the workplace is that, again, the industry says we appreciate Black excellence, but we also only want it to go so far. So one of the things that we have to double tap on here is who sets the goalposts for excellence, who sets the standards, and who is drawing the white lines on the lanes. And those who's come from these 8 major identities: white, education level, post-secondary or higher, cisgender males, able-bodied and neurotypical, huge critical actors there, straight, Christian faith, and then socioeconomically secure. So as individuals look at this menu, the more of these 8 categories that they can check a box for, the more likely they are to enter, the more likely their ball, their goals, their you name it, are to cross that goalpost, are to meet and exceed said standards, and more likely they are to be in the lanes that offer direct career mobility, career success, wealth building opportunities, etc. And when you look at these categories, systemically, these have not been equitably made available for often Black and brown identities. So access to higher education very often, which is consistently shown as being a predictor of long-term wealth earnings, generational wealth building, etc. So that's why it's important to look at these standards. I also often point to hair. The workplace and industry will often like to fetishize hair and the beauty of it, the exoticness of ethnic and Black and brown hair, but then still try to tame said hair in the workplace, where it's pretty if you are an actor or an actress, or if it's kept at a certain length or not a certain color, but not so much if you're in the boardroom or trying to ascend into a C-suite. And the lack of understanding of protective hairstyles, of natural hair, all of that lack of understanding is the reason that we actually have to have the Crown Act, which is so bizarre, but actual legislation to say you cannot discriminate off of the way hair naturally grows out of one's head. And then I'd be remiss not to mention that Black and brown women in particular have been accused of being aggressive or overly demanding, rude, unpleasant, just because they are speaking directly, just because they are not using unnecessary smiles that aren't relevant to the topic at hand, and just because they're not plating what they're saying in a way that is palatable often to white America, white industry, white expectations, or the expectations of those 8 categories once again. So it's often just to the point of what you had asked me about, what if we don't want to do these things? What if we don't want to be the person that is always raising the flag of, hey, did you see what happened over the weekend? So no, I don't want to talk about your dog's birthday party because there was a murder of an innocent Black or brown body. No, I don't want to talk about your golf par. I don't want that, because I want to be here and I want to work and I want to survive. I do not want to be here and be further injured by coming to work. So often we will say, the industry will say, we want you to be an achiever. We want you to go for all the things, but we don't want you to beat your colleagues. No, we don't want you to beat your colleagues. So often what industry is actually saying when they're asking Black and brown individuals to be professional. What industry is actually saying is be in our fishbowl, be in the fishbowl, be in the lane, be in the arena that we have structured as what we just have defined as successful. Again, we being those 8 identities. So often, what I like to challenge our leaders with is before deciding something is professional or unprofessional, leaders need to make sure that they're acknowledging their own fishbowl as well as that of others. That is so, so important. It's not just my fishbowl says that unless you went to this school, or this school, any other degree is inferior. Well, not everyone has equal access to certain schools, and that does not negate the validity of their experience just because they didn't go to the same school that you went to, for example. So wrapping up my part, because I would love to get in questions and thoughts. When it comes to Black excellence being a scale, a spectrum, or both, I definitely lean toward it being a spectrum, because I don't like the idea that Black individuals are expected to overperform in order to get the same or come close to the same level that other identities can be average performing and still see success. So the expectation is that we as a Black community have to be the most articulate, the most educated, the most groomed in a way that meets the standards of those 8 identities: masculinity, femininity, body diversity. Black and brown bodies are often, sometimes, I shouldn't say often, are sometimes shapely in such a way that how something looks on Taylor Swift looks a little bit different on Megan Thee Stallion. And Megan's body is Megan's body, and Taylor's body is Taylor's body. But one sort of body would be sexualized in the workplace, whereas another one may not be. So the spectrum of Black excellence for me is you deciding where you are going to be absolutely excellent, and other areas where you're okay with being average. Much to my mother and probably all my ancestors' chagrin, I hate to cook. The kitchen is my least favorite room in the house. If I never went in the kitchen, it would still be too often. And I have 3 children. So the fact that I'm forced to feed them is 0 stars. I am very fortunate that I have a partner. My husband loves to cook. Thank God. That is an area of life that I choose to be not only average, but below average. And that's okay. That is okay, because I'm still Black excellence, because there are other areas that I choose to be extremely strong and performative and invested in. So for me, that's scholarship, that's education, that's continuing education, but not learning how to perfect sweet potato pie. So that's why I say it's a spectrum, although industry in the world expects and almost tries to demand that Black and brown identities be excellent in all the criteria. I think that our act of resistance is to decide, no, we are not going to be your standard of excellence in this, and this area. We're going to do it on our own terms, because other identities have the privilege of being very average and still seeing success. So an average in all areas, not even just picking and choosing. So you get to decide that. So I want to throw it right back to you all once again. Hoping to connect on LinkedIn with folks in the audience, but also would love to take more questions. So I'm going to stop share.
Excellent. All right. Oh my gosh, like just you saw my face doing one of these.
I did.
Like 100 times. Yes. Like I'm loving all of this. Okay, let's kind of take it from the top. We got a question, or we got a chime in from Simone Ferguson. Thank you, Simone, for chiming in.
Hey,
She said that the piece that's missing from the premise of DEIB at work is the fact that people must feel psychologically safe in order to start conversations, express their authentic self, and to display their full self, right? Like I'm old enough, I refer to it as the build it and they will come model, because like it's like if you want to employ people who use wheelchairs, You're
Right.
not going to wait until you hire someone in a wheelchair to then
Right.
say, oh yeah, we should probably have ramps. Like
Right. Right.
it's easy as that. You don't
It
say, hey,
really
come to my
is.
pool party. The pool hasn't been built yet. Like,
Now.
no.
Yep.
Tyler White commented saying, I love the idea of a me manual. That
Yeah.
concept was held against me in previous work environments without the words for making it more approachable. It's really needed. I love this
Yeah.
because you're right. Like you might not get all of the kind of accommodations or like the
Or
deference to what you're trying to say, but
yeah.
it's probably going to be better than what it was.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on into some other questions.
Okay.
And I really wanted to talk about this. You had a slide on the historical standards of professionalism,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to things like body shape, how you dress, and hair texture. Like, truly, this is a drop in the bucket. But I remember my hair is naturally curly for white people. Okay, it's like it's wiggly, whatever. And I remember being told that I shouldn't wear my hair curly to go to job interviews because it wasn't professional looking. And that exactly. And I'm like,
That's
first
how it
off,
grows out of my head, though.
yeah, it grows on granted, it doesn't grow pink and purple. I will admit that. And it wasn't pink and purple at the time. But like being told brown, naturally curly hair is
Right.
not professional was like, first off, if
Right.
I'm not professional, then what are the rest of these people who look perfectly fine to me?
Right.
So like,
Right.
and that's not even combining it with all of the layers of systemic racism,
Right.
oppression from all over the map. So if
Yes.
that was something that struck me, however many years ago, it's like, how are
Yep.
we still talking about this?
Yeah.
Oh,
It's so
so
crazy. And I my own hair is an act of resistance as well because my hair is natural, but I use a flat iron and it's frustrating because as a Black woman, I sometimes feel that I'm surrendering and I'm conceding to white supremacy by straightening my hair.
mhm,
But the truth goes back to that Black excellence of a spectrum. This is what's easier for me.
mhm.
So in the realm of excellence, a flat iron through my hair once a week is what's easier for me. And so that
Well,
means though that sometimes people are like, "Oh, if Kristin's hair can be that way, then certainly Keisha's hair can be too." No, that's not excellence for her. Keisha is rocking the natural curl pattern that I don't have the patience or the skill set to lean into. So guess what? It's a flat iron.
yeah. Well, and I love the focus on hair too, because it's something that can be so politicized and so gendered, which is just
So
garbage.
gendered.
But like I very much appreciate this because it does kind of show up show how you decide to show up, right? Like my hair is a massive part of my mental health. Like having
Mhm.
it vibrant colors gives me the dopamine. It
Yeah.
brings
Yep.
the
That's my
serotonin.
glasses. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So like I am far willing to put a bunch of effort into this that a lot of people would not otherwise. I have
Mhm.
not washed my hair in the shower in 4 years. I wash it in utility sink in the basement, so I'm not dyeing everything, right? But that's the
Love it.
thing. For me,
Yeah.
that is what
That's
mental
it.
health and
Yep.
self-care and success looks like. It does not need to look
Exactly.
like that for everyone.
Yep. Yep. Love
Yes.
it.
I also want to highlight what you had said about the standards of Black excellence or excellence in general, right? That what we're kind of working back towards is the Black tax, right? It's
Hmm.
it's
Yep.
BS. You should not
Yep.
have to try harder or prove yourself
Exactly.
more
Yeah.
to be given the same level of recognition. If you are
Right.
proving yourself above and beyond, then you deserve that, but you should not feel like that's required of you.
Right. And it's also, adding in the layer of neurodiversity. When you add in folks that are autistic or are on the spectrum or have ADHD for whom they don't have or certain mental health diagnoses, they literally do not have the bandwidth to constantly overperform.
Mhm.
Constantly overperforming is actually detrimental to their health. So for some identities, excellence is literally doing the bare minimum and doing it well. There are people that show up to work, don't engage in small talk, don't go to the break room and chit chat, but they balance their department's budget flawlessly. But you'll never hear a peep out of them. And you also they may never smile. That is okay because that's excellence on their terms.
Mhm. Yes. Yes, 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 yes. Okay. All right. So we talked a little bit about kind of who is setting the goalpost for
Mm.
Black excellence. How should people set their own goalposts? If they
Yes.
are, if they're sitting here saying like, okay, well, I'm not gonna be Beyonce, Chimamanda
Yeah.
Ngozi. I'm not going to be, Tyler Owango. Like, if they are not, if they're recognizing this is not where I'm headed or what I want, how should people be thinking about this?
Yep. So I would say decide on maybe 1 to 3 things, depending on your bandwidth, that are going to be your areas of excellence. What are those areas going to be? And what will it take for you to reach the standard that you set for yourself? So if you want to be known in the workplace for being the creative person, or the dollar stretcher, or the relationship builder, or the details person, whatever it is that you want to be known as excellent for, one, make that known to folks. Hey, when you encounter a spot where you've got the last $1,000 in the budget before end of FY and you don't know where to allocate it, ping me. Like, I would like to showcase my expertise there. Or if you need something really creative, innovative, out of the box thinking, ping me. So show yourself, raise your hand about things that you want to consistently be branded and known for. And then focus a lot on those 1 to 3 things. All the other things that you also have to do for work, but perhaps you don't fill your cup as much, just do them to the degree that you have to. Do them, error free, on time, like just those minimum benchmarks, just meet those, but then shine in those entirely different other areas. And the kind of point A answer to that would be, if you're not sure what those 1 to 3 areas are for you, ask people around you that you trust. What is it that they come to you for? Is it good advice? Because maybe you're a good listener, problem solver, critical thinker. Do they come to you and say, you always cheer me up, that you might be great on a team that has low morale, to come and just infuse some energy into that team? So if you don't know what those 1 to 3 areas are that really, really get you smiling and enjoying your work, ask people around you, what's special about me? What's unique? What's my one thing? I'm
I
sure they
love
can
this.
tell. Yeah.
Yes, yes, I love this. All right, last question that we probably have time for. Can you tell us a little bit more about rewriting the code and your mission?
Yes. So, super fast, Rewriting the Code is an international nonprofit organization that connects, equips, and serves college through early career women in tech. Our single mission is to make sure that women stay enrolled in college in their tech majors or stay in their career as a technician. So they might be a software engineer, a data scientist, mechanical engineer, doesn't matter. We need more women not at the table, but building the table. And that's what Rewriting the Code exists to ensure. And hopefully we will never, hopefully in a few years, we won't be needed. There'll be so many women in tech, we won't need a nonprofit that's fighting for this. But that's what we do, rewritingthecode.org.
Fingers crossed, right? Fingers crossed for obsolescence. I,
Yes.
I would
Gender
love
parity.
to. Yes, gender parity, pay equity, like,
Yeah, all
oh
the
my,
things. Yeah.
yes, all the things. Okay. Thank you so
Yes.
much for sharing that with us. Thank you for joining us and sharing your expertise. We really, really appreciate it, and honestly hope to have you back really soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.